started. So first of all, welcome, Pooja Khosla. You are the technology founder and also the interim CEO of Intelligent. Today we are going to talk about climate models, and I think there's plenty of topics here to explore. So let's maybe get started. When I prepared a bit for this session, I noticed that you're not only interim CEO, but you're also like lecturer at the University of Colorado Boulder. So this seems to be quite busy. So how do you manage to combine all those roles? Because I guess this must take quite a bit of your time.
Yes, so I am Dr. Pooja Khosla, technical co-founder of Intelligent. Intelligent is a climate fintech firm and an interim CEO. And that is my full-time project, mission, ambition. But I started my career as an academician. Before this, I was an instructor slash professor at University of Colorado Boulder. And that is what made me who am I. So I gave a promise to myself that I will try to teach at least one class a year or one class in 2 years, because when you teach, there is so much to learn. Like in my company, the business is so complex, the offering is so complex because delivering some things which are related to climate models to financial markets is a complex process. And teaching makes you simplify things. How will you explain it to the person who have no background of what you are doing? And I think that process of simplification, but delivering knowledge and educating about what you do, how you do, is the trait that I learned from teaching. So one class in couple of years is what makes me who am I, because it keeps me grounded. It keeps me closer to my wishes. There
Mhm.
is a second purpose also over here. It's that I love teaching freshmen because they are coming right off the school. They are discovering themselves and their careers. And I am a climate and impact passionate. These freshmen are full of so much energy, so much rigor, but they're still finding their paths. And it gives me too much satisfaction that right there, when these freshmen are at the point of discovery, I can intervene and add more climate and impact passionates in future and provide this gift to the planet, people who believe in climate and who believe in building this planet a beautiful place, trained and passionate about future.
Mm. Yeah, it's definitely extremely valuable to indeed speak about this with passion and see the enthusiasm in the other people who are learning about all of this. And I can definitely also relate to what you said about trying to explain or improving how to explain certain complex aspects to people. I think in model risk, for instance, we have sometimes quite similar challenges that we have to explain why it makes sense to manage that risk while people might not always have a mathematical background. Still, it is quite relevant indeed. So getting back to intelligence, so you are now the interim CEO, also the technical founder. What could you explain in a few words what intelligent actually does? What is the mission? What is the objective of the company?
So, Intelligent is a climate fintech venture. What we do at Intelligent is that we mine complex climate models. These climate models are designed in a way where they can predict how future will look like. And by how future will look like, I mean how energy prices like coal, oil, gas, nuclear, hydro, will look like for multiple climate scenarios. Like if we want to create a 1.5-degree world in 2100, how can we create this world? What policy pressures like carbon tax? What technological changes like rate of electrification? What macroeconomic factors like populations, GDP, we will need to achieve that 1.5-degree temperature change in 2100 or 2.0-degree temperature change in 2100. So these climate models are very complex, but very interesting features. So in Intelligent, we have learned or developed a technology to mine this energy information from climate models because if change is going to come in future, it will be through energy transition. It will be through more electrifications. It will be through more policies like carbon taxes or Inflation Reduction Act in the United States. And these policies are eventually going to impact the balance sheet indicators, the loan books, the trading books of the businesses and financial markets. So we try to translate this financial material impact from climate at Intelligent. Today we have a coverage of about 40,000 plus global securities, and we produce insights for multiple climate scenarios that are captured under NGFS models. And we provide these information to our partners that include Society General Bank, Bank of America, Swiss Exchange 6, and other financial data financial service providers. And this is what we do at Intelligent. Because when we started this mission at Intelligent with my mentor, who is a Nobel laureate, David Schimmel, we strongly believe that if climate change has to come, it will come through capital markets because capital markets have power. Money is the king. And how can we incentivize capital markets to invest in sustainability, to invest in impact? So we find the signal of that profitability, that signal of alpha, that signal of risk mitigation through intelligent data to empower capital markets.
Okay, that's very clear. If you are talking about mining a climate model, could you maybe comment a little bit on the process of mining? How does that actually happen? Should we think of it as like sampling the model behavior under certain conditions, or does it involve another procedure?
So that includes a careful selection of building scenarios. Look, what I learned in 20 years of my career in math, statistics, and modeling is that all models are wrong, but some models are useful,
Mm.
and some models produce very useful information. So when you talk about climate models, they have a very rich information about energy dynamics. Like if we have to reach to a 2-degree scenario target in 2100, how much carbon taxation it will need, how much incentives to renewable energy it will need. So choosing that very carefully and build scenarios that are realistic is the first step. The second step is that these models are very huge. They have hundreds and thousands of equations and data that they absorb. The most important information that gets into these models, according to us, is that if you put a 1.5-degree climate scenario or under 2-degree climate scenario, what's going to happen to the energy prices? Because all businesses and all people are either producers or consumers of energy. These energy prices crucially impact not only inflation and economies, but also supply chain, business activities, and investments. So, what we are focused on mining from these climate model is first determining the scenario, and
Mhm.
for a particular scenario, how the price of coal, how the price of oil, how the price of gas, how the demand of these fossil fuels will be impacted, how we will see the rise in new fuels like renewables and nuclear, and how the price and profitability of these fuels will be impacted. Once we have this information, I know I'm talking to the audience here who are into risk. We translate this into how these prices and demand features will impact the returns or profitability of the companies like Amazon, British Petroleum, Meta, and others. How do we do that? So these companies, most of the companies have climate targets, but we see that most of the companies keep joining their climate targets and leaving their climate targets. So we wanted to build a model which is actionable and which is free from self reported data, which is more extracting the signal of what companies are doing rather than what companies are saying. So we thought that financial reporting is most accurate because and most regulated. Like if companies do not report financials correctly, there is a problem. So we use the power of machine learning, big data, and LLM models to relate the energy information and company financials by using historical mapping. So we look into up to 20 quarters of historical prices of a company like British Petroleum or like Meta and relate these with our energy prices for a business as usual or a current scenarios. And we find what companies are related to what commodities or what fuels in our mapping process. Once we have this mapping process, our energy models can predict prices and demand of fuels up to 2100, not only for a business as usual scenario, but also for alternative scenarios like 2 degree, 1.5 degree, where we as a planet want to reach a target in 2100. So once this mapping is done, we use the climate information or energy information, demand and price information on fuels for multiple scenarios to predict 2, 5, and 10 years in future, how this will translate to return forecast at a company level or revenue forecast or a cost forecast at a company level. We translate this into return plus financial fundamentals. And this is the information that we produce, which is actionable. We update our information every quarter because this space is very volatile. The targets are changing, the macroeconomic indicators are changing. We are intervening and getting complex situations like COVID or Russia-Ukraine war that impact energy prices. This is changing. So these are very dynamic model learners, and we learn every quarter and update that information to provide risk which is most recent and which is in the lifetime 2, 5, or 10 years of a investment manager or a portfolio manager to build climate resilient investing or trading strategies, or to build more resilient portfolios that are risk proof.
Okay, that's very clear. Now, indeed, the models that you build and that you rely on are obviously extremely complicated. Trying to model how climate is evolving over time requires a huge amount of data, first of all, to build or to train the model. And also the model itself is highly complex, very non-linear. There's all kinds of effects, and it's not always easy, I imagine, to identify what are the key drivers. So could you maybe speak a little bit to how these type of models, how climate models are being created, and maybe more closer to what you currently do, how do you select those climate models? How do you determine which model to rely on versus which one is maybe a little bit suboptimal?
Absolutely. I can help over there. So, one thing I just want to say that we are the users of climate models. The climate models are a mathematical and statistical beast.
Mhm,
But now there have been a lot of academic and governmental exercise where they read data from atmospheres, from oceans, from satellites that are reading the planet activity every day. And they feed this data to climate models. And these climate models, such as Remind, GCAM, or Climate Interactive's En-ROADS, and others, have been built after rigorous work for multiple decades. For intelligent, we work with validated models. So there is a nonprofit named by NGFS, in short. Full form is Network for Greening the Financial Systems. There, they have captured the climate models that have been validated, that have been shown to cover most of the energy, climate, and macroeconomic system dynamics. So at Intelligent, we have in-housed these climate models, and we leverage on this work what climate models are already delivering.
mhm,
What is our special sauce is that we have learned how to mine these climate models and how we can translate information from this climate models to financial materiality. Materiality to the balance sheet, materiality to the profitability. This is where intelligent intellectual property lies.
mhm,
And we have today about 3 patents that are issued in United States and pending in Europe and Hong Kong. So we are more miners and translators of these gigantic climate models where multiple decades of exercise, academic research, data from NOAA, data from World Bank, data from United Nations, data from several satellites have going
mhm.
in.
Okay, that so indeed, I fully understand that you are mining these models, and indeed you're also only using validated climate models. Can you give some details of how these models are validated? How do people verify that they work as expected, given the fact, as you mentioned, that they are so highly complex and they are so highly dimensional as well?
So, as I mentioned earlier in our conversation, that all models are wrong, but some models are
Mm,
useful. So, I would say that these models are validated by challenger models because there is not one model, there are
mm,
multiple models. And if you will see, energy companies like British Petroleum or EIA also have their own models. So the forecast that these models are producing as a community is in under same confidence interval, and how close this forecast is. If 5 models, 10 models, 20 models are producing the results which are very close and very much in alignment. That's how the validation process looks like. But if you will look into the validation from the real life outcomes, I think that these models are produced using decades of information, and how, as an economic systems, we are performing is similar but a little different from these models. Like none of this model could predict that we will be in a situation where renewable energy will be so economical. The prices of the renewable energy are so low and it's so expandable. It was out of the prediction. But these model did set up that if we reach these prediction, how energy systems will look like, how adoption rates will look like. So I would say that the outcomes exactly may not map, but the directionality of the outcomes and changes that will come with a specific outcomes, the signals. These signals are very, very important, and these signals are very, very validatable.
Mhm. Okay. So I understand. So the main approaches, like in many other model validations, would be comparing results with the alternative approaches, so benchmarking, indeed, as you mentioned, and then doing some backtesting, verifying that some predictions are at least directionally in line with what the models expect. Now, we are talking often in the context of climate change about targets that are quite far still in the future. Um, Many models obviously have a certain range of validity, and there might be quite a bit of uncertainty about some of those predictions. Can you give any idea of what, say, the level of uncertainty is in the predictions themselves? Because if we are talking about, for instance, about a target of 1.5 degree, 2 degrees, in 2100, then I assume that most models will produce like a full wide spectrum of different outcomes, and maybe the average or the median is 2 degrees, but the extremes are also quite important, I imagine. So do you have any view on what's the level of uncertainty when you do this type of predictions at a 75-year horizon?
So, Josh, that's a beautiful question. And when I was working to develop intelligent patent, I'm an economist, and I strongly believe that Keynesian theory, um, John Maynard Keynes' theory, that in long run we are all dead.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
and I was trying to translate this model into trading books, into financial materiality.
Mhm.
And I can't go and talk to portfolio managers or investors managers. Hey, you really have to consider this risk because after 75 years in 2100, there'll be a problem. Because they will come back to me and say, Pooja, are you okay? I'm going to retire in next 10, 15 years. I'm going to make
Mhm.
money. I'm not worried about what's happening in 20, 50, or 70 years.
I understand, but then the scenarios themselves are created by assuming a 2 degree target in 75 years. So how to merge those two, the short term, which I understand is most important for most people, versus the long term, which is, say, the foundation of the scenario that is being built.
Yes, because people talk about destination like 2 degree in 2100.
Mhm.
But when you have to drive your car from Colorado to California, you have to follow a path. So definitely in this model, you can look into more granular. Like if you have to go to a 2 degree target in 2100, what is my path? And looking into that path, the trajectory, and mapping if companies are in that trajectory for next 2, 5, 10 years, that's what is believable.
Mhm.
That's what we can provide insights on. And that's what we evaluate.
Mhm.
Because many, many times, if you plan to reach to 2 degree target and you don't do anything for 2 or 5 years previously, you can't take the same path and the same speed of your car to reach to a 2 degree in 2100. Either you have to drive your car faster or you have to take a shortcut. So I think it is very important to look into this granularity and provide information which is real, the information which is actionable, because this is the information that is financially material, and that consider the penalty if you are not on the path already, how you can roll up and reach the goal by adjusting the speed or by adjusting the trajectory to go to 2 degrees by 2100.
Okay, I like the approach of transforming it into a more of a control theory problem, really, because that's indeed what it is. So what you're saying as well is that if, say, it turns out that the predictions of the, say, suppose the predictions of the climate model will be too optimistic, meaning that actually, although we think today that on average we are at a 2 degree trajectory, in reality it will turn out to be 2.5, then over time, obviously, the scenarios will be adopted to kind of offset that overshoot. So yeah, that's quite clear. As we are reaching the end of this conversation, Pooja, maybe one last question. What are according to you, the main open challenges in the field that you're working on? Because it's a huge field with plenty of challenges and a lot of complexity. Where do you want to focus on in the next few years?
So you're right that this space is complex and complicated. And I started my discussion, the teaching story that this place that where I operate is complex and complicated. I think there are three major challenges that can solve and make people more aware of what they can do for risk mitigation,
Mhm.
especially when we really have to look into climate or energy risk mitigation. I think first challenge is education.
Yes.
We really have to educate our peers, financial professionals, and not only financial professionals, but boards and leaders of every company that this risk exists. And it is very important for them to consider this risk, not only because they have to secure this business, but also this impact and sustainability also have a lot of opportunities.
Mhm.
Look at the green jobs it has been created so far. Look at the shifts we are making through this. Look at the opportunities that renewable energies have created and cost cutting that renewable
Mhm.
energy have created for major businesses from diversifying from fossil fuels. So education is the first important hurdle. And Josh, I'm really, really impressed that you are working with this podcast to educate the professionals about that risk.
Thanks, Pooja. Yeah, we're definitely on on the same trajectory here, so that's really great.
The second thing is validation. People believe what they see. So, how we can translate this risk into financial materiality, how we can validate the impact. Because if we solve this quantification problem of validation, then it's a real risk. It's not just a theoretical risk.
Mhm.
And coming from risk statistical and mathematical background, I strongly believe that there are ways we can validate this risk, and validation will, with education, will make information more powerful. And that's where, as a community for climate risk professionals, we work on validation. And third is application. More banks, more asset managers, more pension fund. If they start applying, we'll have more back test, and those will be out of sample, real back test, validating more and more with increased application that who consider these risks are able to perform better. it will increase adaptation of this climate risk. So I think the last is more adaptation, which will come from validation. So education and validation and adaptation are the three hurdles we have to pass to make this from a theoretical to a practical application.
Okay, thanks a lot, Pooja, for this great conversation. It's been interesting to talk about all the challenges and the complexities related to climate risk, and I wish you a lot of luck with all your endeavors, both teaching and intelligent. Great work. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Jas, and